All right, everybody, we're at Lagoon in Farmington, Utah. It's a new season. I got to give my top 5 favorite rides at the park. Join us today on the XP Project. All right, everybody, we are out here at Lagoon in Farmington, Utah, and I'm going to give you my updated 2024 top 5 favorite rides list here at the park. I like to do a new one of these every year. Sometimes it changes a little bit, sometimes it doesn't. My top 1 ride doesn't change a lot, but it might today, we'll see. But we're going to do our top 5 today, so we're going to kind of launch into it. These are my favorite rides, so you know, it might not necessarily be like the best rides at the park in my opinion, but they're just ones that are my favorites, and I'll kind of give you the reasons why that's the case. All right, so I have been coming to this park since I was basically a baby, and so this list I'm sure has changed over the years. Back when I was a little kid, a lot of these rides didn't even exist, and this park looked vastly different. But I would like to ask, hit in the comments, what are your top 5 favorite rides at this park? And I'd love to hear why, to be honest with you, because we can just always give top 5s, but it's always good to hear like the stories as to why they're your favorites. Also, I just want to stop real quick and just say thank you guys all for watching. You know, the summer's still just barely starting, but I've just been so grateful to have you guys along with this ride, and it's been really fun to just show you guys kind of my life here and the things that I like at this park. So let's jump into this. All right, so the white roller coaster, and I know a lot of people that maybe aren't from here wonder why I always call it the white roller coaster. This roller coaster used to be completely painted white back when we were kids. Hit in the comments if you know why they don't paint it anymore. I kind of heard it was during the winter time and stuff, the paint would expand, it just got too expensive, so they basically just left it the wood color. But it was always painted white when I was a kid, and it was always called the white roller coaster, but its official name is just roller coaster. To not have this on the list would just be horrible, because the history in this thing, I mean, it's one of the oldest coasters in the United States, and it's such a good ride, and I have to have this on my list. It is number 5 because it's not one of my all-time favorites, but it's got to be on this list. This one's really cool too, because during the loading area, they've got like the history of the ride going like back at from 1921 all the way to now, like 2012-ish. I'm going to show some cool old like gray pictures of it. It's just really cool. This ride's got a lot of nostalgia to it. I got a confession to make. This is actually my first time being on this ride this season so far, so I'm actually pretty pumped about it. There's not a cloud in the sky today. I'm sure like only the older people are gonna remember this, but hit in the comments if you remember back when I was a kid, they actually had sheep down in the middle of that ride, like where the rocks are right now, and they would just like walk around down in there. It was really weird, but I just remember that as a kid. Hit in the comments if you remember that. So we obviously go to Disney a couple times a year. And it just cracks me up because everyone says that the Matterhorn is like such a rough ride on your back, and that like, oh man, you go on that thing, you're gonna break your back. I'll tell them like, I think it just doesn't feel that rough to me, and I think it's just because of White Roller Coaster, because that thing is honestly, I mean, it's the most jerky ride in the world in my opinion that probably I've ever been on. And so like whenever we go to Disneyland and ride the Matterhorn, it always feels super smooth compared to the White Roller Coaster. All right, so while we're on a video about my favorite rides, at Classified C47 asked this question this week. What is your favorite place at Lagoon? And I think honestly, like if you see my videos much, like Pioneer Village is by far my favorite part of Lagoon. I go back there almost every time I'm here. I just love it so much. But I think the reason I like it so much is just because I've been going there since I was a little kid, and it's just so quiet back there. And this park can get very busy, and it's not a huge park. So when it does get busy, it gets really crammed, but I do find that like Pioneer Village always stays pretty quiet and pretty relaxing during that time. So to answer your question, it's Pioneer Village. All right, so I got Dracula's Castle on this list. I do want to hear in the comments, there's like the rage debate between Dracula's Castle and Terror Ride here. I've got things I like about both of them. If I gotta be honest, I think Terror Ride's a little more modern. Like I feel like the animatronics in there and stuff are just a little bit better. But the reason I have Drax on this list is just because this one was like one of my very, very favorite rides as a kid, and it kind of always will be. But I think that Terror Ride's like a little more modern in my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. But they're both really good dark rides, and I just love dark rides. And the fact that we've got two here, I know they're really short rides. I'd like to see more dark rides here, but the fact that we've got any dark rides, because they're just not really common at you know, carnival style amusement parks, is just awesome. So that's why I have it on this list. All right, so chime in if you work here or you know someone that works here or in the past. There's that end where the rocks are like, you're like going through like a rock tunnel. When I was a kid, that would spin and you would get so dizzy and sick. And I kind of wonder if they stopped that because people were like throwing up from it, or if it's like a mechanical issue or maybe just a cost issue. All right, so I've got Colossus at number 3. There's a lot of things I want to say about this ride. There's a couple reasons why I have it on this list. Number one, this was one of my favorite rides when I was a kid. And I think a lot of people my age probably agree with that. It was one of the kind of major roller coasters back in the day, because, you know, they didn't have like Cannibal and Wicked and all those big time coasters. And so it kind of was the big coaster back at those times. Another reason why I like it, for just the pure idea of coaster, you just don't see a lot of the coasters that have that double loop in them. You know, I mean, you see tons of coasters that have the single loop in them, but the fact that it has that loop and then a loop again, it really does give a different feeling than a lot of just average roller coasters, and that's just why I love it so much. You know, it's like, tell me if you think the same, but like the smell of this ride, the sound, and like the fact that it's like still the same carts from like the really old days, it just brings so much nostalgia to this ride. I just love it so much. And you get a great view of the park from up here too. It's great. Here we go. Woohoo! Yeah! You know, so many really old coasters like that just tend to be like really clunky and like uncomfortable, but for it being as old as it is, Colossus is actually a really smooth ride. Okay, on to the next one. All right, so while we're walking to our next spot, let's talk about least favorite rides at the park. Oh boy, I've got a couple. So the Sky Ride, I absolutely despise. And I don't know why. It's just, it constantly stops, which I get it, it's gotta stop at times. But a lot of times you're just like sitting there. I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's a nice way to get from one side to the other, but I'm just somebody that would like rather walk. And I'm not like scared of heights necessarily, but stuff like that where you're just like hanging out just doesn't really do my nerves any good. And so the fact that it's like high like that and then it just like constantly stops, it's definitely not one of my favorites. You'll rarely see me ride that ride. Also, the wheel is another one that I'm just not a super big fan of. I never really rode it a lot as a kid, and the amount of time that you wait to get loaded and everything for like a small ride just doesn't really feel worth it to me. But hit down in the comments, what are the rides that you guys do not like? All right, so Cannibal's number 2 for me. I had to put this on the list, there's just no question, and high on the list. I think there's argument to be made that this may be one of, if not the best roller coaster in America. Just the elements of it are just absolutely wild. I mean, the fact that you go up slowly, like in the elevator, kind of adds that effect. And then, you know, you've got the loops, you've got the waterfall, you've got the corkscrew. I mean, this ride is just so revered, and I think it's just an amazing piece of technology. And the fact that Lagoon actually designed this one themselves just makes it even that much cooler, just to know that there's not one that's exactly like it anywhere. It's so great. So a couple of things I want to say about that ride. Number one, I don't think, and I've been on a lot of rides and I go on a lot of rides at different parks, I think Cannibal's the only ride that like I genuinely am like a little scared each time I go on it. Now I'm not like, it's not like I'm like fearing for my life or anything, but it just has that thrill. If you're a thrill seeker and you're not from Utah, you have to come here. I mean, I would say just to try Primordial and Cannibal would be worth your time. I mean, there's a lot more to do out here too, but I mean, it's just one of those coasters. It's just hard to explain, but it's really a legendary coaster. And I think if you're not from here, you should at least give it a try. Come out and even just spend one day out here, because it's one of those that just genuinely, as a thrill seeker, it gets your blood pumping every time, no matter what. And then the other thing I will say too is it's just, Lagoon made a turn when they put this ride in. I mean, it really did something. Like the park like evolved when they put this in, because we became, you know, kind of a bigger theme park at that point. That's my opinion. Tell me if you think otherwise. But when Cannibal was put in, it really changed this park from like little carnival park to like an actual theme park. All right, so Colin asked the question, do we remember the old water slides by the Rocket? I do remember those, and if I'm not mistaken, they were called Hydro Luge, and they were right over by where Primordial is now, and you could actually ride it. It was a water slide with rafts, that you could just wear your clothes and ride on it. You didn't have to be in a swimsuit. And it was a cool idea, but at the same time, I think a lot of people just didn't want to get really wet. But I do remember that ride. Thanks for the shout out on that. And Colin, you also mentioned on that post about my thoughts on the expanding of Lagoon and there might not be a lot of room. I think that there is a chance that there's probably a little bit more room than we think. I've spent a lot of time kind of back between that area where the haunted houses are in Pioneer Village, and I think they definitely could expand out to that area. They would have to get rid of a lot of the eating areas, and I think they'd be okay with that if it means putting in like a really good attraction. But I am all in favor of the expansion. I think that for this park to stay relevant, they got to be pumping out a new ride at least every few years. I think if it's like one of those scenarios where they're waiting 10 years between rides, I just don't think it's a good look for the park, especially the fact that it's pretty slam-packed every weekend. It's just not a good look if they're not putting out some new content, but I think that they will. But I'm all in favor of expansion for sure. All right, everybody, so if anyone's watched even more than one of my videos, they know what my number one is. It's Wicked, Wicked, and more Wicked. This is just my favorite ride at the park, and I know it's not like probably a lot of people's number one, and I know like the criticism that it gets is after that main drop, it's kind of lackluster. But I'm telling you, I'm a big guy on rides that like go from 0 to, you know, 70 miles an hour, like kind of like what Incredicoaster does at Disney. And this is really one of the only like launch rides that you'll find here at the park, this park specific, but I just love that feeling of being launched so fast up. Now, the fact that you also get to go right back down right after is just another plus to it. So yeah, the end of the ride isn't like the most amazing, but I just love what the first does, and that's why this is my number one. I will say the other huge benefit to this ride also is there is a single rider queue. Now, I did get in the comments recently, I know somebody said that it's maybe possible to go through the exit to get through the single rider queue. I have not tried that or confirmed it yet. I'll try to get that confirmed at some point through the season. But I mean, to get to the single rider queue, you just go through that main first part of the queue, and then when you go upstairs, there's a second one over that's for single riders. So you just let the attendant know that you're single rider and you go over to that one. During Frightmare season, it might not save you a ton of time, but like on a slow day like today, you're gonna actually basically just walk on the ride. So single rider queue during the summer, especially during the days, is awesome. I will say I do like riding this ride a little bit more at night. Just because basically it's like pitch black in that little hallway that you go in at first, and so it's like pitch black and then you shoot right into the other. So I do prefer this one at night, but during the day it's a little better too. I don't know, I can't really decide whether I like it better at night or not, but it is really fun at night, especially during like the Frightmare season when it's just nice and cool. I will say, let me know if you agree with me, but I've actually found that the back left seat is actually the best ride on Wicked, because if you kind of look at the physics of it, you're looping the farthest loop when you hit that corkscrew. And so it just feels that way. Kind of the same thing can be said about Cannibal. Like with a ride like Colossus, that doesn't apply because it's all in a line. But the fact that you hit that corkscrew at that angle, that back left seat's always my favorite seat. All right, so I know that it's gonna be like a really unpopular opinion that I don't put Primordial on this list. And I got a few reasons why. I wanna explain myself. I love Primordial. I think it's a really good ride. I think it's something the Lagoon needed. But it's just not my cup of tea, just to be honest with you. I do like coasters and stuff, but I'm just not really big in like shoot 'em games and stuff like that. But if you've got like a young toddler or a kid, it's a perfect ride. And I think Lagoon really needed something of this scale, and I absolutely love the ride. And possibly when the crowds died down a little bit, I might fall in love with it a little bit more. But just to me right now, I just have a hard time like waiting for a couple hours to get on a ride like that. But again, I just want to be clear, I love the ride. I think it's an amazing ride. I just don't have it on this list because it's just not my cup of tea. You know, it's funny, while I'm kind of picking these rides, because I actually come out and just pick these as I go. I didn't like pre-plan this out. I just came out here and said, what are my 5 favorite rides? You know, I'm looking at the Rocket because I love that ride so much. But this time of year, the Rocket is brutal because it's right in the sun and there's no shade on that ride. And honestly, if I sit on that thing with my skin, I might be cherry red by the time I get off of it. All right, everybody, that's gonna do it for the 2024 top 5 rides at the Lagoon Park. Chime in, I wanna hear all your guys' top rides. We're gonna be still rolling along. There's a lot of summer left to go. Thanks for joining us on the XP project.